What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, yet again, I'm going to show you that just about any OEM desktop could be converted into a gaming case. For today's video, I chose this old school Lenovo S20 ThinkStation. Now usually I would have the original case on hand, but I did make this conversion many years back and I threw away this original case, so we're just going to look at some photographs here and really give you an idea what this thing looks like outside and inside. Now, like I said, this bad boy came out back in 2009, and this was a very expensive model. It featured the X58 platform, which was quite upgradable back then and still is now. It could go all the way up to a 6-core and 12-thread processor and 24 gigs of ECC RAM DDR3. Let's just take a look at some pictures, give you an idea what this thing looks like before the final conversion. As you could see, we have a 20-in-1 multi-card reader and your usual DVD rewritable disc on top. This is a very bulky and square shaped looking thing. It's got a good weight to it. But of course, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you either have this workstation already and you're just curious how you could convert it into a gaming case, and it's very easy actually. This is one of the easier conversions in my opinion. Or you may consider picking one of these up on eBay. They're starting at probably 100 or so, and you don't really have to get the fully loaded version because you could always upgrade down the line. The IO shield is fully removable, as you could see. That's a very good thing. It pops right out and you could put it right in your new case. That's pretty much what it looks like inside. Don't be intimidated by this thing. I know it looks crazy, but this conversion was pretty easy, and I'll show you how it's done. It has 6 DIMMs, up to 24 gigs of RAM. This machine could be really good for video editing, some streaming, gaming, all kinds of stuff. Yep, it's got 2 PCI Express lanes here for video cards. You could do SLI in this thing, or Crossfire. Okay, so that's pretty much what it looks like inside. Now let's go over the specs. Here are the original specifications for Lenovo S20 ThinkStation that I used for this video, and also what you would expect to get for $100 shipped on eBay. Here are the key features: Intel Xeon W3550, 3.0 GHz, 4-core 8-thread processor, 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM, which could be upgraded to 24 gigs, which is plenty for video editing or gaming. And also, as I mentioned, the Intel Xeon here could be upgraded all the way to their highest W series, which is W3690, 6-core 12-thread processor, clocked at 3.46 gigs and 3.7 turbo. And one last thing I wanted to mention here is that the Lenovo S20 does originally come with the Windows 7 Pro sticker, so that could save you a lot of money. You just go ahead and upgrade to Windows 10 and you have yourself a free legitimate Windows Pro and ready to go. So all there is left is to see what this bad boy came out looking like, so stay tuned. Alrighty, now let's take a look inside of all the parts that I use for this gaming case transfer. For starters, I used an old Antec Performance Plus 1080 AMG metallic red Windows steel case server. Now this bad boy is probably 12 years old, but it's still in good condition, and I felt this is the right kind of case for this transfer. One of the reasons is the case that you will be using for this transfer would have to be a top mounted power supply, because I did keep the original power supply, which is pretty beefy and it's quite useful because it's 625 watt 80 plus bronze rated. It comes with plenty of connections, including two power connections for the graphics cards, a 6-pin and an 8-pin. More than enough juice to have some of the newer powerful graphics cards, I think. Plus, this is a weird power supply because the motherboard has 3 connections into it. We have the 10-pin up on top, then another wire comes over to a 4-pin into motherboard there, and on the right side you have another 24-pin connection. So at the time when I did this years ago, that's how I kept the original power supply, because there was more than enough power for this transfer, and I think it's a good idea just to keep it for your transfer. Now you could use other cases as long as there's a slot for the top mount power supply. There's plenty out there in the market, so that's one thing that you would have to definitely do, is use a top mounted case. Okay, now let's go over some of the other items that I upgraded. I do have a 120 gig SSD drive for the boot and a extra 1 terabyte storage of mechanical drive. I also kept the original DVD drive and also the 20-in-1 multimedia card reader, because this case had the little slot for it. It was perfect. And then for the graphics card, I chose a GTX 970 here. This is the Founders Edition with a nice back plate. It works really good for this platform. And I did go ahead and upgrade the CPU to the maximum that it could be, which is the W3690 6-core 12-thread, 3.46 gigs and 3.7 turbo. The RAM, I have 12 gigs. I didn't max it out to 24, but I think 12 is enough. So currently it's running at triple channel setup here. 12 gigs is good enough, I think, for this build. And then also I have the fans all filled out, 2 in the front, 80 millimeter blue LED fans, 2 of them in the front, and 2 80 millimeter fans in the rear. For this specific case, those are the biggest fans that you could actually use, and they work quite well in my opinion. I know they're not the biggest, but I think overall it came out pretty good. I threw in a couple of green LED bars on the bottom, and I think overall this thing came out pretty nice. Now all there is left to do is pretty much, I'm gonna take out the graphics card now and zoom in into the bottom and show you closer the wires and how the wires go, because there is really no modifications in this transfer at all, and no cutting wires or nothing. This is one of my favorite transfers out there. So let's take a closer look. Okay, now let's take a closer look inside and go over the wiring. As you could see, I kept the original power supply for this gaming case transfer, because this power supply has 3 connections into the motherboard, and I'm not sure if there's any adapters for that, but I kept it like that. Besides, this power supply is 625 watt 80 plus bronze, more than enough for a build like this, and it has plenty extra connections. So let's go over the wires. As you could see, the power supply wire here comes to the 10-pin connection here on the left, and then if you look down, it splits to another wire. That's another 4-pin connection going into the motherboard. And then on the right side you have your standard 24-pin connection. So you got 3 connections powering this motherboard. Also on the left side here you have your fan header for your exhaust fan. So I believe this has to be plugged in, so whatever case you have, make sure it has a fan header. Like a 3-pin will work, even though this is a 4-pin header here. 3-pin will work, that way you don't get an error. Now let's go down to the bottom and go over the important details. This is the most important part of this transfer, is these wires. So let me go over them all one by one. We're gonna start off on the left side. On the left side is your audio header for the front. In this case I'm not using it because my case did not come with that, but it will work with your case. This is a standard front audio connection that's the same on all the aftermarket motherboards, and it works quite well. Here to the right you have the thermal sensor that you would need to keep plugged in from the Lenovo S original tower, otherwise you'll get an error. So you keep that and just run the wire somewhere in the back and hide it. It works just fine. Next on the right is your power connection and a reset connection of your front panel of the gaming case. So for the references purpose of the pins, we have 4 pins on top, 3 on the bottom. Going horizontal, the power connection to the right will be plugged in, which will leave you 2 pins open on the left. And for the reset connection going horizontal, exactly underneath the power, which will leave you empty pin on the left here and an open space to the left of that. So that's your reference here guide, so that way you get the right connections going in the right pins. Next to the right we have the HD LED connection. We have 4 empty pins on the bottom and 3 pins on the underneath. The power LED will go connected to the bottom, going horizontal, and it will leave you 1 pin empty on the left and empty pin space on the right. So that's how you know you got it in the right space. Next we have the front, we have the fan header here that I'm using for the front fans. For one of the fans is the 80mm front fan that I use this, and then on the, let me move it to the right, and I'm using this fan header also for the second front fan. That's really up to you, but I really like to utilize everything on this motherboard. You could have just regular fans that are connected to Molex, that's up to you, but I'm just showing you that they do work and they're quite useful. Okay, next here is this is the white connection here. That's for your 20-in-1 multi-card reader. That's quite useful. Now if your case would have, basically it'll come like over here in this case. Let me show you. Right there I'm having it here. Right there it's connected. You see the wire coming down. If your case has that one little extra slot underneath, which usually you could fit like an extra USB connections or a floppy disk, so then yeah, you could use that and it fits right in there, no problem, and you run the wire right down there and everything comes out working pretty well. And the last thing on the bottom here is your front panel USB 2.0 connection. And yeah, it's a standard one, so any case, it'll work with any case out there, connects right in there, the pins match up and everything works fine. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the wiring. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward. We didn't have to do any modifications, no adapters, and we didn't have to cut any wires. This was a really easy transfer in my opinion. Well, all there is left to do is test out this bad boy and see how well it performs in some gaming test benchmarks. Stay tuned.
mom and she put the diapers together and we all tried to make those babies. There's a tunnel up there that leads to the town. The highwaymen are blocking it. We're gonna need to find out. That's the plan. There's a workbench outside. Use it to build a weapon. Rush was supposed to be finally like that. Now, we're solving it. I'm sorry. That must be bad. I promise. I'll figure out a way to take this right. There's that workbench in Georgia. Rush said you were resourceful, so let's build something. You can use benches like this to build makeshift weapons and proof of land. Take a look at what weapons you can craft. Yeah, we need more resources. We're gonna have to poke around and scare some up. Find useful things almost anywhere.